This time we're talking about the future.
The Out There Hour on Alternative Future Radio. The Out There Hour with Basil and Mark. www.alternativefutureradio.com.
Yay!
Good morning.
Good evening.
And good afternoon.
To Europe.
Africa.
The Middle East.
Australia.
French Polynesia.
Asia.
Greece.
Ooh.
Good morning,
I think
Basil.
Greece got their hands full.
Greece have got their hands full. They deserve a good morning, especially
they sure
for them.
do. We are our sympathies to you, Greece.
Yes, sorry about your government.
Yeah, sorry for everything.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Just sorry.
But we're not that sorry because you're us.
You're us in a year's time.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Moving on has nothing to do with today's guest.
Although he could probably tell us if it was going to be us in a year's time.
think so.
Segue.
We've got a return guest.
Sometimes they come back.
Sometimes they come back. And a very big name in America.
Yeah.
A regular on George Norrie's Coast to Coast.
He was
which
on
is
Larry King Live a few times as well.
CNN.
Yeah.
You name it.
He's been on quite a lot.
He's Paul Guercio.
Paul Guercio. From Merlin Project.
The Merlin Project. It's a computer.
Yeah, he uses a computer
program
algorithm that him and Dr. Do you remember his surname?
Dr. Hart.
Dr. Hart, who is the pioneer behind the LASIK eye surgery laser. The two of them got together, formulated with a bunch of other physicists and some other fancy coders some time ago now. 80s, was it?
Back in the 80s.
Formulated this computer program based on cycles, and they use it to predict peaks in events in the future.
Look, it's mathematics, it's sort of numerology, and it's sort of astrology
almost,
and it's a mixture of all, basically fed into a computer program.
Yeah, and then what it turns out tends to be at least 75% accurate.
Now, it's very, very important. The first thing you do today is go to the website.
Yes. Go to our website, alternativefutureradio.com, find the Paul Guercio entry, and you'll find that there's some time tracks that you can download. There's a little zip file, and you can download them, and they're in PDF format, so if you haven't got a PDF reader, you can go and get one for free.
Okay.
And you can be looking at those while we're talking, because we're going to be discussing these tracks.
It won't make any sense unless you're reading this, and don't panic when you do open it. You don't have to print it out, you can just open it up. You're going to see a ream of numbers and letters. It
looks like a mountain range.
It looks like a mountain range, and there's a date, 2000, 2001, 2002.
Yeah.
And corresponding that you'll see peaks of the letter U or little twos, and we're going to explain all of that, but this is how this works. You will learn to read this
If you catch our older show back from, I think, March, we explain in a lot of detail how to read this. So if you really want to understand it, go back and listen to that show first. But we're going to briefly go over it again today with Paul Guercio, but a really detailed explanation
so
we did
just before we start, open up this on your Word document or whatever you have to do, and it's going to make a lot more sense to you. And I remember when I first got it, it was just
I just stared at it.
For days.
It sent me into a hallucinogenic trance.
But we promise you it does make sense, and we've had it done I've had mine done.
Yeah.
You've had yours done.
Yeah.
And the Out There Hour
show itself
has had its done.
Has had one done.
So it's predictions. Is predictions right?
Yeah, predictions. Yeah, predicted patterns.
Yeah, patterns based on the past events.
Yeah.
Which can tell you what will happen in the future. The best time to get married, the best time to maybe start a business.
Or a family, or you can also look up world events.
Hey, the best time to invest in Facebook.
Ho, ho, ho.
That ship has sailed.
That ship has long since sailed.
Zuckerberg.
Anywho, shall we do it? No, you just don't like him?
I don't like Zuckerberg.
Really?
He said we were all dumb.
Did he?
Yeah.
Well, I don't like him either now.
You were meant to beat me out there.
Beep.
Yeah.
Anywho, shall we do it?
Well, why don't we have an advert first?
Shall we?
Yeah, why not?
Have you always been interested in the esoteric world? Perhaps you'd like to learn more about ufology, lost civilizations, cryptozoology, or even conspiracy theories. We have diploma courses in all these subjects and more, and our tutors are all experts in their fields. So, if you want to become an expert or just have a great time learning about exopolitics, false flag terrorism, or the paranormal, then the Esoteric Academy is the place for you. EsotericAcademy.com, where ideas and learning meet.
Are you ready for an adventure? Prepare yourself for more alternative future radio than any human being should have access to. How do you get this? It's simple. With the new Alternative Future Radio Android application, you can download all the latest shows and the archived shows as well. Help support Alternative Future Radio for just $1.99. PayPal will bill you in your very own currency if you don't use dollars. Find out more at alternativefutureradio.com.
Okay, everybody, we are joined on the line again for the second time by Paul Guercio, getting his name right first time now, I think, from Project Merlin. Get the website right, Mark. It's projectmerlin.com, and Time Tracks spelt with a K without a C and an S.
And it's the second time we've had Paul on, so we're absolutely delighted.
Yes, we are indeed.
To have him back.
Paul, do we still have you?
How's the weather there, Paul?
Hot. It is hot. It is uncomfortably hot for Maine, the state of Maine in the United States. We don't get weather like this generally. So we're dealing with upper 90-degree temperatures, and that's unpleasantly uncomfortable. So
we don't have such luxury here. We have lots of rain.
Rain, yes,
and it's cold. No need to laugh. No need to laugh, Paul. We can make predictions too.
Yeah, we're predicting bad weather.
But it's so nice and green there.
Well, yeah, it would be. It rains
there's so much water, it has to be.
Right, exactly.
If it rains anymore, it's going to go blue.
We have lots of brown grass growing here at the moment. So, Anyway, listen, before we get started, there's just a couple of quick things I want to mention to you. The last time we got together in March of this year, we spent quite a bit of time, and I almost put you guys through a tutorial on how this technology works.
You did.
So if
we needed it.
Well, right, exactly. If listeners want to get a really good insight into the rigmarole of how this actually works, they can go to that podcast and get a lot more detail about the inner workings of this than we're going to do this time. This time we're going to talk more about predictions than we are about the technology and the ins and outs of exactly how it works. So they can go back to that earlier podcast and actually get that. Also, we're going to talk about something called time tracks. Mm-hmm. Time tracks are what the Merlin technology actually outputs. They are graphical interfaces that give you a picture, a visual picture of what a moment of time is going to look like if you extended it into the future, with the idea that each moment of time has a different future. So like a musical score, let's say, because it's a little bit like that, if you capture an instant of time in the present, we've developed a technology that allows you to weave a map of what the future highs and lows are going to look like. And we can tell you, how many years out from the current moment it's going to take before the activity increases or decreases by a significant amount. And while we can't tell you exactly what's going to happen, we can give you a pretty good idea of when in time, like a set of time coordinates, a little bit like a GPS, which tells you where you are on the planet. Merlin can tell you when in time, from a particular starting instant, the activity level is going to go up or down appreciably. And what we found over the almost 25 years now that Dr. Hart and I have been doing this, and by the way, just FYI, this started out as a hobby that got out of hand. Okay, we never intended, essentially, of making a business doing this. Dr. Hart is a physicist who works for NASA and the Pentagon, and is one of the prime holders of the patent for the laser that is used in LASIK eye surgery, called the excimer laser. Dr. Hart, with a number of other people, are patent holders on that. He developed it back in the 70s when he was working for the Naval Research Lab, an arm of the Pentagon. And he and I got together in the late 80s. He heard me on a radio show, and he got together to find out what this time system was that I had developed. And over the last almost 25 years now, we have been remarkably successful in using this technology to forecast when in the future a particular event is going to fork off in some new direction, when it's going to get bigger or more important or conversely less important. And we can see on these graphs where in time that's likely to be by looking for where in the graphic the trend line, the timeline that's indicated, is all of a sudden rockets up like a mountain range or just completely drops off the map. So when you're looking at these time tracks, they may initially look fairly complicated, but what you're really looking for is, are we currently in a period of great activity or not? And if we're not in one, the things that you begin in that period are probably not going to catch fire. They're not going to really take off, or they're not going to take off at the rate that you might like it to. On the other hand, if there's an enormous amount of activity, the visibility of what you're doing is likely to become very much more prominent. So what clients do with us, what we do with this technology is we develop patterns for our clients, telling them when in the future to start a particular project or sell something they want to sell, like a property or something, when to start a business, when to have elective surgery, that kind of thing. And what we're doing essentially is we're predicting this using a system that's really not unlike tide tables. I mean, if you were a fisherman and you wanted to go out fishing, you might consult the tide table to find out if the water is in or out. Because if you sit by the shore and that's how you do your fishing, and the water happens to be 3/4 of a mile out into the bay, you're not going to catch much. Okay. On the other hand, if you're a shipbuilder, you might want to know when the water comes in so you know when to launch your ship. Okay. So like tide tables, these Merlin time tracks will tell you when in the future the situation you're interested in is going to change in some significant way. And while, as I said, we can't always predict whether that change is going to be positive or negative, we certainly can give you a sense of when it's going to happen in time and how big it's going to be, what kind of impact it's going to have, and how long it's going to last.
Paul,
so that's essentially what the Merlin Project is all about.
Paul, it's worth pointing out that the time tracks that we're going to be looking over today are going to be attached to the web page for this interview on alternativefutureradio.com. Paul, I wonder if you might just also explain very briefly, on your time tracks, they're made up of sort of little letter U's and little number 2's. Can you just quickly just explain the difference between the two?
Yeah. First of all, we wish they weren't made up of little 2's and little U's. That's the fault of the fact that we were using a computer program that wasn't capable of generating the graphics that we wanted. And when we originally designed this, we designed it back in the late 80s.
Yeah.
When people were using DOS.
Yeah.
Okay. Before Windows was really even out there. Okay. And we were able to generate graphic characters in DOS that would give you dark charcoal markings or light charcoal. Okay. Well, that sort of fell by the wayside as DOS became almost an antique language. And what has happened since is that when we run the program goes in and looks for a typewriter character, which is dark, and a typewriter character which is light. So you get these little 2's or Z's as the light color, and these little U's with a little umlaut topping on it as the darker character. What they represent is different time models. The lighter color, the lighter shade character represents rapidly occurring cycles. Cycles that come and go on a daily basis or a weekly basis or a monthly basis. a little bit like ocean tides, which come in and go out twice a day, or sunrise and sunset, or that kind of thing. The darker shade, the little U's with the top umlaut on it, represents cycles that come along essentially very infrequently.
Right.
They may only happen every 7 years, or they may happen only every 20 years or 40 years or 80 years. Okay. And what we're doing essentially is looking to see whether we have a confluence of both of those time models going on simultaneously. So in other words, the most interesting stuff that's going to happen is probably going to happen on those time tracks when both of the time models are showing up at the same time.
Right.
Okay, that's, if you'll notice, that's fairly rare.
It is, yeah.
Okay, there are places where there's only little 2s.
Yeah, I see those. Yeah,
there's places that are only little U's, and then there are essentially occasionally places where they're both going on at the same time. Okay,
Yep.
Yeah.
When they're going on at the same time, and for the interval in which that's happening, which may only be, in some cases, a couple of months, okay, and especially if both of them are peaking. In other words, there's a spike of activity then, so much so that it's taller than the general trend line is for the rest of that series of years.
Yeah.
If you have a point in time there where both time models are showing up simultaneously and at a fairly high level, now you're looking at something that's probably going to represent a peaking phenomenon in or around the event you're talking about. So it's going to be another version of that event, or it's going to be fallout from it. When, for instance, we ran the time tracks for the World Trade Center bombing, which occurred in 1993, we ran that, and we ran it out about 20 years, and we noticed this confluence of activity going on at the very end of 2001, beginning of 2002. Now, Dr. Hart and I, it never occurred to us that the people that bombed the World Trade Center were going to come back for a second try. Okay, that never dawned on us. Okay, but it was obvious when we looked at it later that we actually could have predicted 9/11 by looking at the bombing in 93. Because it was clearly obvious that there was going to be a hiccup at that point, about 8 years later, that showed up in advance when we ran the 93 time tracks 8 years before 9/11 even happened. And the other thing that's interesting about that, although it's not among the stuff I sent you, I believe if you go to timetracks.org and you take a look in the event section. Now, mind you, if your audience goes and does that, they're going to say, well, some of this stuff ought to be updated, upgrade. Well, yeah, you're right. Okay, we really should have upgraded it, but we've been busy, and when we get around to it, we will. But if you look, for instance, for the time track for Pearl Harbor, now it didn't occur to us when we ran Pearl Harbor that you could maybe forecast 9/11 from that. But isn't that the next sneak attack, launched from planes and whatnot that came along in the history of the United States that had some remarkable similarities to it in terms of, number of people who were killed. In fact, if you take a look at the number of people who died at the Pearl Harbor bombing in 1941, and you take a look at the number of people who died in the World Trade Center in 2001, okay, 60 years later, almost exactly, you find that the totals are remarkably similar within a few dozen or a few hundred deaths. So we could actually have predicted 9/11 by looking at Pearl Harbor had it occurred to us to do that.
Paul,
okay,
Paul,
go ahead.
Am I right in assuming that one of the, if limitations is the word, of the technology is that you show peaks, but you don't necessarily know if they're good or bad?
That is correct.
Yeah. So you may have thought that the World Trade Center might win a Global Architecture Award or something, but you may have also thought something bad. It would be hard to know.
Exactly. That is exactly correct. There's when NBC in New York did a piece on us back in the early 90s, the interviewer came up from New York, and he said, "So in other words, you don't know whether it's going to be good or bad. You just know it's not going to be dull."
Yeah.
And that would be a very good way of expressing it. Now, the thing is, we've gotten better over the years at figuring out what it's going to be by seeing it in advance and then doing a little homework.
Paul, what's your percentage rate? What are you up to? Because how accurate are you? Because you get quite good results.
Yes, we do. What we admit to is that the technology is going to find the right time frame for the big change, about 75 to 80% of the time.
That's way above chance, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And by the way, from a statistical standpoint, anything that's more than 5 percentage points above random, which means if this thing only worked 55% of the time, that would be what scientists call statistically interesting. Okay. What we've found is that it's rarely less accurate than 70 to 75% of the time, or about 20 to 25 percentage points above a coin toss, which in some cases is the only other technology around. Okay. Merlin and coin toss. Okay, so Merlin's going to be right about 7 times or 7.5 times out of 10. Okay, and one of the things we learned in the last almost 25 years of doing this is that if we run several related dates, so let's say we were talking about you guys and we ran your birthdays and the date you started this project you're involved in, and the dates you if you got married, what those dates were, and if you applied for a loan or something, what that date was. In other words, if we took what we would call critical dates with respect to the given situation, in other words, they're all somehow related to the question at hand. If we run each one of those, they're going to tend to overlap and dovetail each other, so that they're all going to say something similar about where the change point in the future is going to be, even though they're not going to say it in identical ways. If you run 3 or more time tracks related to the same situation or the same players in that situation, you get more and more precise about when the event is going to change and how big it's going to be and how long it's going to last, and to some extent what it might consist of in terms of whether it's going to be good or bad. So our ability to predict this good or bad issue it has gotten better over the years, although that part of it is not the technology. That's just because we've gotten to be better news junkies than we used to be.
Yeah.
Okay, we do a better job of doing our homework about given possibilities. So, for instance, I'll give you an example, and we can discuss this in detail if you want to, but just to get it out there. We've included the run for the United States of America, run from the 4th of July in 1776 forward into the period of time we're in now.
Yeah, I have that one.
And you'll notice that time track, starting around the end of 2012, beginning of 2013, goes crazy.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, there's this enormous mountain range. Okay, now, a lot of us have heard about and been some concern about this end of the Mayan calendar, which happens in late December this year. So it's December 21st, 22nd, 2012.
Yep.
Oh, there's all kinds of, there's going to be pole shift and, enormous climate change. UFOs are going to land, okay, and so on. Well, we noticed this change probably close to 20 years ago when we started running these. And there's a big change. There's some big changes going on in the years in this decade. But what we noticed was that if if you look at the time track for the Mayan calendar, which is I think we provided it last time to you, and it's on the home page of the website. So if you go to projectmerlin.com and you look at the first thing on the first page, there's a time track for the Mayan calendar, what we call the end times. Well, it really starts in 2007, 2008, and by 2012 up to 2013, it begins to taper off. And if you take a look at the last couple of years, we almost went into a worldwide depression. There's at least a chance that we're not out of it yet even. Okay, and one of the things we noticed when we ran these 20 years ago, we said, gee, this looks like it's going to affect, 2 out of every 3 people. So we were thinking pandemic or tidal wave or incoming asteroid or something. It never occurred to us that it was going to be financial. And in the years we're in right now, 2 out of every 3 people have been adversely affected by the financial climate. But on the U.S. run, it doesn't show a lot of activity in the years prior to 2013. But in the years from 2013 on, it goes nuts. Okay, it's got huge mountain ranges. It goes on for like 5 years, 6 years, something like that. And there's big peaks and stuff. So it's almost suggesting that for at least the U.S., and since we have a tremendous effect on the global economy, this upcoming several years is going to be rockier for the U.S. than maybe the last 3 to 5 have been, and the last 3 to 5 have been no day at the beach.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
And the other thing is, and I said this to you before we got on, and obviously we're not wishing this, but when you're in the prediction business, you're in the prediction business. I've noticed, and you and I discussed before we got on, the fact that one of the big problems with what's going on politically in the United States is that we found out that we're a lot more racist than we thought we were. And probably close to 20% of the population is absolutely crazy mad that this Afro-American guy got in the White House. And there have been all kinds of threats and whatnot. Well, if they were mad the first time around, just imagine how mad they're going to be if he gets reelected, which I would say in percentage points is probably got at least a 55 to 60% chance of happening. In other words, 5 to 10 percentage points above 50-50, okay, that he's going to get reelected. He might even get better than that, but something like that. And so figuring that there might be some repercussions from that would affect the U.S. and therefore affect the U.S. time track, I went looking around for something that might explain it. Well, one of the things that matches the U.S. time track in level of activity and when it begins, in other words, matching the point where the activity really rivets up, okay, is the date for the assassination of Martin Luther King, which was 4th of April in 1968. So if you run that date and compare it to the USA chart, what you're practically looking at is mirror images of each other. So now it becomes clear to me, at least, that if these crazy mad people who couldn't stand the idea that this guy got elected once, if he gets reelected, the chances of somebody taking a pop at him goes way up from whatever was going on in the first term. Okay, and what's really curious about it, and I think I sent this to you the first time we did these in the batch, there is a time track in there for Obama-Biden, the combined ticket.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes, that's right.
And boy, if there isn't a big change on that one around 2013, 2014. Okay, so you have to wonder, is something going to happen here that's going to be, detrimental to the well-being of this person? Again, not set in concrete, but given the level of activity that's showing up on both of those, you have to at least say, well, there's at least a chance that we're looking at something here that might be catastrophic as far as that goes. And given what's been going on financially in the world what's been going on in the U.S. politically and so on, while the time track for the USA could be, nirvana. It could be 5 years of great stuff going on.
Yeah.
I just don't see that.
We're not
likely.
Yeah, we were looking at that. I mean,
given the political.
There are great big peaks there, but as you said yourself, could it be that Obama's stimulus package pays off and America goes into a 7-year long boom?
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah,
wouldn't it be nice?
Wouldn't that be nice? But there's also something else about this. Last time we did this, I sent you David Cameron's run.
You did,
correct?
Okay,
yeah,
and you've got it in there someplace. Okay, if you look at David Cameron's run. At the end of 2012, beginning of 2013, it also goes crazy. Okay. And you guys over there are so interwoven in what happens to the U.S. that there would be a pretty good chance if we stumbled badly in here, it would have a significant effect on what's going on in Ireland and the U.K. And therefore affect David Cameron. Okay, who's in a job that's not quite as secure as the U.S. presidency, where you get thrown out on your duff in no time flat if things really get bad. So the question then becomes, not only are we looking at several years nirvana for the U.S. As a question mark. But are we also looking at something like that going on where you are? Because otherwise, why would there be all this activity going on around Cameron at the same time spot? Okay, right at the end of 2012, beginning of 2013, that's where David Cameron's run rockets off. So could things get better? Boy, would I like to see that. Could the U.S. have several years of great stuff going on, or progress? Yes, I'd love to see that. Do I think that's the likely scenario? Probably not. Probably not.
Oh, dear.
And again, the interesting thing about all of these, whether it's the Martin Luther King run, the USA, or whatever it is, they're not dependent on anything current. They were generated from dates that occurred, in the case of the U.S., 200 and some odd years ago. In other words, 200 and some odd years ago, it was written in the structure that around 2013, that time track was going to rocket off, even though the technology wasn't around 260 years ago, whatever it is. The ability to generate that time track has been around ever since we've developed this technology. If we had decided to run, July 4th, 1776, back in 1989 when we first started doing these, well, we actually did run it, but we didn't run it as far ahead as we are now. We ran it maybe 10 or 15 years ahead. We ran it from 1989 maybe up to the early 2000s, but we didn't run it out to where we are now. Had we run it out to where we are now, we would have seen the same graphic that you're now looking at, because that graphic has nothing to do with having been generated, when we ran it. The date that made that pattern possible is the July 4th, 1776 date. That's what we call the Genesis date. That pattern would have been true no matter when we ran this. Okay, so knowing that that's the case, we have to presume that certainly, in point of fact, over the next, say, 3 to 5 years or 5 to 7 years, however you want to look at it, there's going to be some very interesting new business going on that has a possibility of being somewhat more ominous than positive, just because of the circumstances going on as we enter into that period, because they have to be factored in. Okay, that's where you get into this issue of, is it going to be good or bad? Well, what's going on at the moment? Okay, and what are the chance odds of things getting better given what's going on at the moment, versus things getting much better. And I would have to say, well, and it's not because I'm a pessimist, I'm a realist. I look at this and say, okay, this doesn't look good. On the other hand, one of the things that's interesting is that there's all kinds of yada going on about Iran. Well, we went and we ran when the Ayatollah came back in 1979, and when the students took over the U.S. Embassy, and et cetera, gee, it doesn't really look like it's going to get progressively worse in the Iranian situation. And while I didn't run Syria, I did run a bunch of stuff on Egypt, and it's clear that from the Egypt dates, Hosni Mubarak's birthday, Nasser going back to the 50s and so on, you can clearly see that this period of time was going to be a tremendously changeable one for Egypt. Each one of the runs essentially shows that. And you can see it with when the street demonstrations began at Tahrir Square, and Hosni Mubarak's birth date, when he took over. Okay, they all there's where, as I said to you at the beginning, if you have a set of dates that are all connected to the same situation, you get a clearer picture of the timetable than if you only have one. And while we only have one for the U.S., actually we could get others, and we could run the date the Civil War started, and we could run the date Roe v. Wade happened, and et cetera, et cetera. They would probably show that we're moving into a very active and potentially troubled period.
Paul, I want to move on. I want to ask you about the Martin Luther King assassination, and that one's relevance for today. But before we carry on, I just had a thought there, Paul, about an interesting time track you might be interested in running, unless you've already done it. And that is cult mass suicides. I wonder if there's a pattern in those. Because I tell you where I'm going with this. You've got things like the Heaven's Gate cult and the Waco and all that kind of stuff. Jonestown. The reason why I'm thinking that is I wonder if it would predict one for 2012, because I'm sure there's some cult out there that's planning on jumping off a cliff at the end of the year.
I hope not.
That's very interesting. See, you're right. What you'd do is you'd take the Georgetown incident in Guyana, and you'd take other ones like that, the Heaven's Gate one. And you'd run all of them and see if there's a peak of activity showing up at the end of this year. I'll tell you what I think about the Mayan calendar stuff. Now that I've pretty much concluded that it was financial, not pole shift. Okay, I may be the only one on the planet who thinks this, who knows about the Mayan calendar things. But I have a feeling that's all liable to turn into a Y2K.
Yeah, that's generally what I would go with, to be honest.
Which was a big yawn.
Yeah, very much so.
Nothing happened. Oh, the nukes might set themselves off. And, I mean, you remember the Y2K thing? People went crazy. They took money out of their bank accounts. There was all of this stuff.
Yeah.
It never developed into anything that, as far as I know, with a few minor exceptions, it did nothing.
Yeah.
It didn't screw up. It didn't screw up the computers governing nuclear power plants or any of the things they thought were going to happen. Not a single one of them did. And I'll tell you something. Statistically, it's been suggested that I didn't do the counting here, but I'm told that the end of the world has been predicted about 3,200 times.
That's right. Yeah, I think
in the whether it's in the Bible or various holy men and crazies.
There is a list of them online, Paul, that you can get. Yeah,
I'm sure there is.
There is. Yeah, there are hundreds and hundreds.
But you know what? Not a single one of them has actually connected up to anything. There's nothing happens. I think that over on the next plane, if there is a next plane, they're laughing their tootsies off at us trying to figure out when the end of the world's going to be.
Yeah.
Okay. What we really have to worry about is actually the more subtle stuff. There's a movie that came out a couple of years ago, I think 2010 or 2009, something like that, called The Day After Tomorrow.
Yeah.
Gyllenhaal's
Dennis Quaid, I think it was.
That is correct, Dennis Quaid. It's a very, very good movie.
Yeah.
It's based on the idea that as the Arctic ice melts, it changes the salinization level in the northern seas, like off your coast, off the what do they call the Great Banks?
Yeah,
not the Great Banks.
The North Atlantic currents.
The North Atlantic current is going to. It would be affected by the melting of the polar ice caps. Well, there's no question the polar ice caps are melting. When Lewis and Clark in America were sent off to try and find a water route to the West Coast, they found there wasn't one. Okay, well there is now.
Yeah.
Okay.
There is, yeah.
There's going to be a water route across Canada to the West Coast, to the Pacific, because the ice isn't going to be there anymore.
Yeah.
The amount of ice melting has been absolutely extraordinary. That has got to have an effect on the climate. And the people that say, "Oh, well, this global warming stuff is nonsense." Well, it isn't nonsense. If you take a look at the extremes in weather that we've been getting here, that you've been getting there, okay, and so on, there's some definite changes. The oceans may not have risen 25 feet and are inundating Miami, Florida, or New York City or something, at least not at the moment, okay, but the desalinization process going on in the North Atlantic and whatnot because of the melting of the polar ice caps is going to have an effect on things, because that Bermuda current that comes up and warms, that makes our weather what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, and your weather what it is. Okay, is going to change as the temperature of that water changes. I mean, we already know that has an effect on things. That's what El Nino is. Okay, it's a change in the temperature, a spike in temperature or a dropping of temperature in waters off South America going across the Pacific. Okay, as that changes, our weather changes. There's more hurricanes or fewer hurricanes or whatever it is, and the level of destructive weather. Just talking about golf. We were talking about golf before we got on.
Yeah.
I mean, the one of the major tournaments that occurred outside of Washington D.C. this past weekend, they had to ban galleries on Saturday because there were so many trees knocked down from these 80-mile-an-hour winds that basically came up out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Okay. Or the 90 plus near 100 that we've been experiencing up here in Maine. You don't get those temperatures in Maine. You might get a day or two or three like that in like middle August, if at all. Okay, you don't get them at the beginning of the summer, and people are forgetting, that summer just began a little over a week and a half ago. It just started. So for us to be getting triple-digit temperatures up here is literally unheard of. The number of records that have been set in the past couple of weeks in the U.S. in terms of temperature has been absolutely extraordinary. So anybody who thinks that there isn't climate change going on is kidding themselves. The problem is, and this also affects things like this Merlin technology, is that in the cycle of weather, which may be a 26,000-year cycle, where in the 26,000 years are we exactly?
Yeah.
And are we near to the beginning, near to the middle, near to the end? Where are we? We only have records that go back about 200 years, and we only have ice core samples that go back maybe 9 or 10,000 years, with a weather cycle that's probably better than twice that much. So we don't know where we are in that cycle of weather. So we could be we could be at a point in time where another, what they call the Little Ice Age, that happened in Europe in the 15th, 16th, 17th centuries, okay, lasted about 200 years, okay. Incidentally, you may have heard this, they think now that one of the reasons why Stradivariuses produce sound that's just not like anything else is that it was made from wood that grew in those years, with much tighter rings in the wood than normal, and as a result, the wood produces a much sweeter, truer sound than other woods do.
How odd.
Okay, so
how odd.
I mean, there may be a plus, at least for people like violin players. Okay, but for the rest of us, weather has gotten, frankly, a little weird.
I guess one of the biggest phenomenons of the last few years, and I know that you and I are on it quite a lot, Mark, because we use it for promotional purposes.
Yes.
We're trying to use it as a tool. The Facebook phenomenon,
yes.
Paul.
You ran a couple of those, didn't you?
Yeah, you've got a track for us here. What do you say on that?
Well, here's what's interesting about it. From a financial standpoint, what I did was I ran Mark Zuckerberg's birthday, which is May of 1984, I believe. And the date that Facebook was founded in February of 2004, and the date of this IPO, this investment offering, stock offering, in May of this past May, 17th of May. What's interesting about those is if you take a look at the current window on each of those, that is if you find late 2011, beginning of 2012, through to say 2013, what you find on each of them is not a whole hell of a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, the Mark Zuckerberg one, post sort of 2012, it's pretty flatline with a couple of small peaks.
It is pretty flat, exactly. Not exactly what one would suppose might be ideal for issuing a stock offering, which may be why the stock went up to 42, and then people are now all mad because it's dropped in half, basically. I didn't check to see what the current stock price is for Facebook, but it's probably around 20, 21, 22 in there someplace. Okay. In other words, it's dropped down to about half of what it was on the day of the IPO. Okay. Same thing with Zuckerberg's own run. Same thing with the date that the Facebook was founded. And the interesting thing is, if you go back to 2004 and you look at what was going on there, you see that there was some activity going on there. And if you look to the point past where we are now, around about late 2013, 2014, there's at least some activity going on there. Not these huge mountain ranges that we're seeing on some of these others. You would like to see that if you were an owner of Facebook stock, because that would mean that the stock price is probably going up. Not necessarily. It could also be dropping off.
I was going to say, because it could mean that Facebook completely tanks and goes bankrupt.
Well, this, I mean, looking at this, the time to float the shares were 2004, 2005. Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah.
Yes, I would look at that and say, well, this has probably only got a 50-50 chance, if that, of really turning out to be the next big thing, which of course we all thought it was, and priced it up like crazy. I mean, look at what happened in the .com era, when companies were being priced based on IPOs and not based on the fact that they were producing a product.
No.
Well, they were producing a product that they were also giving away, okay, which was a little silly. Okay, one of the few that survived and has actually turned out to be a monster is Amazon and Google. Yeah. But if you take a look at Amazon's launch and Google's launch, you'll find some very different stuff going on there than is going on in the Facebook run. So I look at the Facebook run and get the same come to the same conclusion. Now, you see, you guys have only looked at these things twice,
Yep.
basically, in the last year,
Yeah.
and you already made a prediction about Facebook that I would have to say, knowing how these work, that you're probably close to the mark. That is, it could tank.
Yeah.
But you see, what the listeners have got to understand about this time track that I'm looking at, starting from 2001, 2002, you would have had this information back in the 90s. You would have had the.
That's right.
Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what's so interesting about these. We could have, if we had the dates for Facebook back in the 90s, which of course we didn't because it didn't exist yet.
Yeah, but if
we had the dates, we could have run this then, okay, and said, boy, this is, this doesn't look like it's going anywhere over the long haul, and we certainly would never have picked the dates that they picked to launch the IPO.
No.
Okay. Now, the question remains, if, say, they had consulted with people like us and said, find me a date when the IPO is likely to take off like crazy, okay, we could have found them a date where it did that. But Mark Zuckerberg's birthday wouldn't have gotten better. And the founding date for Facebook wouldn't have gotten better because they already existed. And they basically say, so in other words, let's say they'd contacted us and said, find us a date for this IPO. We could have found them a date when all hell would have broken loose.
Yep.
But the upshot of the whole thing still might be that it would tank because the run for his birthday and the run for the founding of the company doesn't reflect the same kind of activity.
Yeah.
Okay. And where I said to you at the beginning of this conversation that if you have several dates connected to the same situation as we have there with Facebook, you'd have to come to the conclusion you guys came to, which is this looks like it might not go anywhere over the long haul. And I would say there's at least a 50% chance that you're going to be right.
Well,
And the problem with Facebook is, and I don't know whether you guys are on it or not. I am. But
yeah,
I'm on
we're on it. Yeah,
We are, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
/ out there hour.
And the show's on it too, isn't it?
It is.
Well, the Merlin Project Research Group is also on there. Okay, we've got Merlin on there as a Facebook page. The problem is, as I think it was GM put it, people are not. You buy advertising on there, it's not having any effect.
No.
People are not buying the stuff. Okay. And it may have something to do with the culture of the internet, although Amazon seems to have figured out how to do it. Okay. That people don't like to pay for things. They like to get it for free.
Yep.
So, a lot of websites have had a hell of a time finding a way to make the website pay.
Yeah.
Because New York Times has figured it out, Wall Street Journal's figured it out, Amazon's figured it out, but there are an awful lot of them that haven't figured out how to make the website pay at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'll tell you something interesting that wasn't going on last time you and I talked. Dr. Hart has been working his tail off the last several months to get a 4G application built so that if you have a 4G smartphone or tablet or any of those things, over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, you'd be able to go to a time track, that's TIMETRAK app, punch in a date, and get the time track for that particular moment.
Oh,
now that would be handy.
Let's say you saw a girl that you said, "Oh, there's a hottie. Okay, I'd like to go and approach her." You punch in the date and time that you spotted her, and it basically looks like Facebook. Okay, and you say, "Whoop, not today." Okay, because it probably, if you approached her, you'd get rebuffed, or it wouldn't go anywhere. Okay, or let's say you see a car in a dealer's lot that has a really good price. It looks like a really good deal. So you punch in the information and you look to see, is there activity going on or not? Okay. Now, in the case of a car, you might actually prefer to see a nice time track with not a whole lot of activity going on, because a lot of activity going on might mean that you're about to buy a lemon.
Yeah.
Okay, so you got to be careful. You got to learn how to read these things.
Yep.
But the idea is that you could run this, and if you punched in your birthday and some partner's birthday or prospective partner, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is, you might, if we get this thing all worked out, you might be able to get a time track that tells you, is this a potential relationship, and could it potentially go anywhere?
Compatibility thing, yeah.
Now, that George is convinced, and I can understand why, that if we're actually able to do this, it could become a very hot item.
It could, certainly,
because if you guys can look at these now after only seeing them twice, and look at the Facebook thing and get a read on it, okay, and say, well, this potentially could tank, and be right, okay, then it's not that hard to teach people how to at least get a perfunctory reading of these to kind of know what they're looking at. And they don't need much more information than that. If they want to get details, they can run the thing and then call us up and arrange to do some consulting time where we actually do the hard work of figuring out what the long-term potentials are. But if they just want a quickie hit and they're in a bar or something, or they're on campus or whatever it is, this could turn out to be really interesting.
Give them the basics.
You know, Paul, I wonder what. Have you anybody to pass this on to? I mean, when yourself and Dr. Hart, you know.
Shuffle off?
Shuffle this more. Yeah, what's going to happen with it?
What an interesting question that is.
I wonder,
I wonder that about a lot, I guess.
We have talked about it, okay? My problem is, George doesn't have any kids. I have two. One of them is a legislative aide to the United States Senator Susan Collins from Maine. He works down in D.C. on the Hill, as he likes to put it. Okay, I work on the Hill. Okay, I have tried to get him interested in this for a long time. His attitude is, it's not my thing. Okay, so there's a problem there. My daughter, who when she would have friends over and I'd be dubbing tapes from shows I was on, they would notice that I was on with Larry King, and they would say, oh yeah, he's been on with Larry King hundreds of times. Okay. Actually, what was true is I dubbed the tape hundreds of times. But I'd only been on with Larry maybe 3 or 4. But anyway, she expresses no interest. She's a little operator, so you know, if there was a hustle in this someplace, like the iPhone app, okay, she might get interested. But from a technology standpoint, there's no particular interest at all. So it's something we've been concerned about. We will eventually here, with a little luck, put out a book or two which gets into not only what we've learned and what the history of this has been, because the history of it is almost more interesting than how it works. Okay, the story of how we got to be here with this is extremely interesting, and also the technology of what it does and how it actually gets to do that. So we will at least leave more than a footnote about, you know, what this has been all about. Whether we have somebody to hand it off to at the moment is a serious issue.
It is. Because you did my time track, you did Mark's, you did it for the Out There Hour, and that was back in March. And pretty much what you said was going to happen happened to us.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
You said we started on the wrong date for us, and we were going to have to work extra hard, and we do. Boy, do we work extra hard.
We do.
But you said it would eventually improve, and things are improving for us now. Actually,
certainly.
This last few weeks, I think.
Right. Well, again, the fact of the matter is that we've had enough experience with this that we're no longer surprised when it does what it's been doing all along. You know, from day one, this thing has generated graphics that have been accurate at least 7 times out of 10. So in other words, we've been 20 percentage points above chance odds from the very beginning. And when the technology was first launched, the fellow who did the code work and whatnot built into it a sort of control room so that we could go in and tweak it if we had to. We've never had to tweak it. Never had to tweak it at all. Okay, which is nothing short of remarkable, considering we laid out the parameters of this and the algorithms over dessert on the 4th of July in 1989 at my house. Okay, for about 2.5 hours, I sketched it out for Dr. Hart, who then turned it over to a bunch of SDI physicist people who had time on their hands, because at that point in 1989, Reagan, President Reagan, who had started the Star Wars project and the global shield thing that he was going to build, basically went into a kind of holding pattern because he left office at that point. And so the massive funding that had been put into it in the years from 83 to 88, 89, was no longer there, but they still held on to a lot of the physicists and scientists because they weren't quite sure what was going to happen. They didn't want to let them go because then they'd have to go and try and find new people that knew what the old people already knew.
Yeah.
So they didn't want to let them go on that. So they were paying them, but they were basically sitting around, doing a lot of busy work, and because of that, I was able to get them to do this for me and not pay for all the computing time I would have had to pay for. It actually got paid for by the government.
That's nice to get something.
Yes, they were paying these guys anyway, and they had time on their hands. So they applied it to this. Okay. And so I got maybe the equivalent of $500,000 worth of computing time in $1989 for free.
Yep.
Okay. And that was a stroke of great luck.
I mean, you had some of the finest minds working on this program, when you think...
I did. That's exactly. I mean, because the whole idea of the Star Wars project with Reagan was what they call a bullet hitting a bullet. Okay. For an ICBM to manage to target the payload of another ICBM at the kind of speeds these things are moving at and whatnot, I mean, is nothing short of remarkable. And that's what George was doing for them when he came into my, ken. And I once described to Larry King, he says, well, what does George do exactly? I said, well, this will give you an idea. Let's say you had a room with 4,000 mouse traps all set with ping pong balls sitting on them. And you threw a ping pong ball into the room. Okay. Well, in no time flat, you're going to have ping pong balls flying in midair all over the place.
Right.
George can write programs to figure out how many balls were in the air at any given moment and how many nanoseconds into that with the maximum number of balls flying in midair and so on, because that's the kind of thing you'd have to do to be able to separate out the warheads from everything else that's going out there in order to hit them. And it took years, till probably maybe only as recently as 8 or 10 years ago, many, many years after Reagan put this idea out, probably close to 20 years later, that they were actually successful in hitting a bullet with a bullet. Test firings, they would, launch something off the coast of California or from Vandenberg or something, and then they would launch an intercept, and the missile had to detect the launch, find the target, and destroy it, in the blink of an eye, basically. And that's the kind of stuff that George was doing all those years. So for somebody who needed a physicist, a scientist who could figure out, with many dishes in midair on spikes or some those spinning dishes things that you see. George is somebody who could do that. He could figure out, how to keep track of all of those moving bodies and what the confluence was for all of that. So he could tell me when the maximum dynamic was going to happen, when the maximum number of these cycles in the solar system were going to all peak at the same time. And these graphs are the result of that. So we really had no idea when we started this whether it was going to work, whether even if it showed stuff, was the stuff it showed in any way related to real-time things going on. It was a number of years before we were able to determine that, yes, when this shows big activity, there is in fact big activity going on for that situation or person or event or whatever it is. So, for instance, people now use this for things like, I need a date to sell a property in a market where the homes in my neighborhood are not moving. Can you find me a date that if I put this on the market, it's more likely to sell? And we've come up with a way to do that. George Norrie from Coast to Coast had a wonderful explanation for why that might work. Actually, the best explanation I had heard, better than the ones we had.
Yeah.
He said, Paul, he said, when you're trying to sell your house or whatever it is, you don't need to reach everybody. You just need to reach the person that wants to buy your house.
Indeed.
And if this thing cuts through and gets to the sort of organized coincidences that really govern a lot of our lives that we aren't aware of, that things are more organized than we imagined, and if you can actually plug into that circuitry, you can get things to happen with a higher degree of frequency than if you just do it willy-nilly. If you purposefully pick a date out there in the ether because of the activity it presents, that somebody who needs to buy your house is more likely to see your house or your ad or run into your real estate agent or whatever it is than they would have if you didn't do that.
Well, I wish I'd known about you, Paul, about 15 years ago when I bought into some shares. That's all I can say in a telecommunications company in Britain. But
again, it's
Who was that then?
we could maybe not have told you whether that was going to, be extraordinary or tank.
Yeah.
But we could have told you when to look for that. And usually, if the thing that you're scoring essentially has a history to it, if it's been around enough years, there's been some indications of which way it was going to go at earlier stages than the one you're currently in, and you can make a pretty good judgment call on which way it's liable to go by knowing what it did then, because what it's going to do now is probably going to be an extension of what it did at that earlier point. So if you know where that earlier point was, say, take a marriage. Give me your birthday, her birthday, the date you first slept together, date you actually got married if you got married, and I will tell you how long that's liable to last, where the twists and turns are going to be. If somebody's going to have an affair and blow the whole thing up, you can see where that's likely to happen, okay? And be right maybe as much as 8 or 9 times out of 10.
That's pretty good.
We're actually over time, Paul, but I tell you what, there is one weird, odd question that was preying on my mind last time I spoke to Paul, and it's on my mind now, and it won't take long.
Go on.
It's almost a yes or a no.
Go on.
When you do a personal time track for an individual,
right?
Maybe if you do their entire lives, this is going to sound very morbid indeed. Would it show up when somebody's going to die? Or how long they're going to?
That's a perfectly reasonable question. What it will show you is all of the big transition points in their life. And dying is going to be one of those.
Probably the last one would hope.
Well, now let me tell you. Let's say you had 2 people. We've actually done this.
Oh, God.
Many times. Let's say you have 2 people who are born on the same day of the same year at nearly the same time.
Yes.
Okay, now, what would their time tracks look like? Well, they'd be essentially identical or pretty much identical because this is a time-based system. If they were born at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in such and such a place on such and such a day, okay, they would be living through time together. Well, are they all on a given day when either one of you were born? For instance, there was probably about maybe as much as 1,000 or even 2,000 people born on that day. There were certainly a few dozen who were born within the same hour or so, thereabouts. Okay, are they all going to die on the same day at the same time? The answer is no. Okay, they're not. Well, why not? And why wouldn't that be true? Well, what you're going to find is that when 2 of them died, 2 of them also got married. 2 of them also lost a parent. 2 of them also moved or lost their job or started a business that turned out to be really successful. In other words, the big stuff, it's the big stuff that happens at the same time. And dying is one of those big things, but it's not the only big thing. And so if you've got people born on the same day of the same year at the same time, they're going to have the big stuff happen in the same years, and you're going to find that at least for some of them, dying is going to be what happens then, but not for all of them. Okay, and the other thing is, if, it's the old Irish proverb, if I knew where I was going to die, I would never go there. Okay, well, if you know when these big transitions are going to be, you can set your sights on doing something big, okay, starting something big or whatever it is, or let's say getting medically checked when you don't normally do that or whatever it is. And you can change the event from something to something else.
Okay.
In other words, you have some control over the outcome of that period. It's not just set in concrete. If you left well enough alone, yeah, you might die then. But if you decide, well, I'm going to go get a complete checkup, and the doctor finds something that had they not found, it would have been fatal or really serious, and they're able to do something about it, you're not going to die then. Okay? Whereas otherwise you might have. So if you know when to look for the big things, and in an average lifetime, let's say you live to be 80, middle 80s, okay? In an average lifetime, and more people are living to about that point than used to, okay? There's going to be something like maybe 20 or even a little more than that, but at least 20 very pivotal periods in that lifetime when if you look back over the years, you find, well, 75 or 80% of the big stuff that happened to me happened in those years. Okay. If you had a collection of people born on the same day you were, and you check that off, you're going to find that when big stuff happened for you, some of them died. That was their big stuff. Okay. So and people have said, well, you run these things after people died sometimes. Why would you bother doing that? I mean, you look at Martin Luther King's assassination. He's not about to get assassinated again. He's dead. Okay. Well, you know what's interesting? The big Martin Luther King memorial just opened. Okay. Just now, after all of those years, the big Martin Luther. It just within the last couple of months. Okay, because Obama was there for the opening and whatnot. I forget when this year it was, but it was this year. Okay, it may have been around the assassination date. I don't know, in April. I'm not sure when it was, but I know it was this year. If something that you stood for or was unique to your existence in some way happened on that date in the past when when you died and you ran that date forward into the future, if something like that is going to happen to someone else even, but have the same level of yada that happened when it happened to you, you may be able to figure out when something's going to happen to them simply by watching the extension of these time tracks for what happened to you. So if a previous president, for instance, had a grandchild or something also become president, okay, if you ran that earlier person's birth date and or death date, you might very well see a big explosion of activity at the time that grandchild is elected president. Because if they hadn't been here, he wouldn't have been here. Okay, so it's an extension of that earlier stuff, and it's really remarkable. I got really lucky in this department, in that when I had my boy child, okay, it was in October of 1987. My then girlfriend was working for a company, and about a year later, she went to work for another company, and they installed her in an office. And a few months later, they hired a public relations woman and installed her in the adjacent office. Well, the girls got friendly, and one walked into the other one's office at one point, saw a picture of an infant on her desk, and said, "Oh, you have a little boy?" And she said, "Yeah, well, so do I. How old is your little boy?" "Well, he's almost one." "Gee, so's mine." "When was your little boy born?" "In October." "When in October?" "October 4th. "So was mine." Okay. It turns out these two women who worked for different companies, never had anything to do with each other until a year after the kids were born, were now working for the same company in adjacent offices, and had two kids born at the same hospital on the same morning within half an hour of each other.
Paul,
we're rolling into the next one now.
It's brilliant having you on, as always.
I'm sorry well, we have to end there, Paul, because you're like a father figure to the Out There Hour.
Hey, listen, guys. Anytime, and when big stuff starts happening in the news and whatnot, and if you want an update or something, please give us a buzz.
We will. Paul, do give your details, because you do offer this as a service to people.
And it's a worldwide, so you don't have to be in the US. He can do it. You can be in Europe, Africa, the Middle East, Thailand. It doesn't matter. Paul.
Skype, phone, whatever.
I will very quickly give out the contact information.
Yeah, do it.
Please do.
Okay. The website is projectmerlin.com, all one word, projectmerlin.com, no spaces, or timetracks, TIMETRAKS.org. Timetracks.org and projectmerlin.com are the websites. If you're not online, you can reach us at a toll-free number. You have to, from whatever the area code you've got to dial before you dial our number. It's sometimes 011 and various codes. But then it's 866-298-7688. So 866-298-7688. And from the U.S., it's just a dial 1. Okay. We have a postal address if you'd like to write us. It's P.O. Box 1241, 1241 in Seabrook, New Hampshire. Box 1241 in Seabrook, New Hampshire. The zip is 03874, 03874. And we're on Facebook if you'd like to friend us on Facebook. And you can get in touch with us by getting in touch with the two of you
Yay.
at your website.
Oh yeah, that's
Okay.
perfect. Yeah.
So we look forward to doing this again, and next time maybe I will try and fit this into an hour and 20 minutes. You only have an hour.
No, what we'll do next time is we'll give it some decent time. And
next time we'll clear the schedule a little bit.
Yeah.
And listen, make a list of questions. Okay.
Yeah, we'll send some stuff.
The ones you've thrown at me today were terrific. They were very, very good questions. They're the kind of questions that the more astute listener asks. So you're helping your audience out because you're asking what they would have asked if they had been able to do that. And they are very astute questions. So believe me, they are. The what happens when you die kind of thing it's a perfect. Believe me, it's something that Dr. Hart and I puzzled over when we first started doing.
Hey, I bet you did.
I'd say so. Certainly.
So we absolutely did.
Paul, thanks for coming on. Do think about running my my little idea there about these cult things, because I'd love to see if there's a pattern. Because
you break it up.
Oh.
Yeah, Paul, do come on again, and do think about running the idea we were talking about there about running the cult things to see if anything's comes up in December this year, because that would be interesting.
Oh yes, I will. I will do that, because it happens to be a very good idea, and you would expect to see an outbreak of that at that time, simply because what's really funny is one of the guys who is selling up to $1 million condos underground. For this Mayan calendar, ending of the Mayan calendar, was interviewed. He doesn't have one of the condos himself. It's all a bunch of nonsense.
That's about right.
He's selling them for $900,000.
Oh well, I wish him luck. Thanks for coming on, Paul. It's been brilliant as always, and we look forward to next time.
Have a great time.
And thanks everybody for listening. This has been the Out There Hour at Alternative Future